Welcome to this week's episode of Three Cups and a Dash of Spirituality, where the ladies go on a wild adventure talking about reincarnation, what it means, and where it can take you. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Three Cups and a Dash of Spirituality. I am here with the beautiful Michelle.
Hi, everyone.
And the equally as beautiful Carissa.
Hello.
How you guys doing today?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah?
Doing
It's
pretty well.
warm in Austin today. It's warm. I went for a walk and I started getting hot.
See, we've got freezing rain coming down right now here, so it's not beautiful here. But we're talking about reincarnation today, and I'm actually really excited about this episode.
Yay.
I have taken so many notes that looking at this piece of paper is stressing me out because I don't even know where to start. There's so much there.
That's
right, well-
awesome.
I have a great starting point.
Yes.
Ladies, what is reincarnation?
I have the definition here.
You
I'm
have
not sure where I found it, but the definition of reincarnation is the soul of the person is essentially the same, but occupies a new body after death.
That's beautiful.
I
mean,
didn't
that's how
write
I
it.
would-
I found it
that's-
somewhere, and I wish I knew so I could give them credit.
That's how I define it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the reason I have the definition for reincarnation down is because we have reincarnation and we have past lives. So I was looking, they're kind of the same, but a little bit different. And so I was trying to define for myself and hopefully for others the difference. So
That's really cool because I always linked those two together. So I
Yeah.
would love to hear more about that to expand my perception on it.
well, I think more of past lives is who you've been, whereas reincarnation is how
Oh.
you come back. I mean, that's kind of
Got it.
what, after I did research,
Yeah.
I felt the answer was. I mean, it's just a slight differentiation.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I did a lot of research actually back in high school on reincarnation because I was fascinated by this idea. And I read stories about, little kids reliving the lives because they had reincarnated and they could still remember the life that they lived previously and facts and, family members and stuff like that. And there were instances where there were people still alive that were, in their previous life and were able to confirm that these facts were true. And it was, I remember just being so drawn to it and fascinated by it.
And I do have a couple of those case studies in my notes, which we can get to. But yeah, that is super fascinating. Reincarnation, the way I understood it up until doing training and doing more research, is that lives were, is it consecutive? Like they happen, like you had one life, you died, you came back to the next life, and kind of like that throughout
Yeah.
history and time and space. But lately it's come to my attention, everything is happening at once. So every life you're living is happening at the same time. How do you feel about that? Is that how you look at reincarnation too?
I don't because we're in a physical body, but is it possible? I mean, I could theorize. Yeah, I think it's possible. Anything's possible. I mean, once we pass, there's no such thing as time and it's energy. So
I mean, we've had the conversation in the past too, where time doesn't really exist. It's a
Mhm.
creation because of the human experience that we're having. So everything could very well be happening at the same time, and that could tie into why you have these case studies where people remember vividly things that happened in their previous life, but they're happening kind of at the exact same time, stacked one on top of the other.
mhm.
The concept is so fascinating to me, but it's one of those things that it's so big. I can't even wrap this human brain around it. So it begs, like, when I'm thinking about it, if everything is happening at the same time, if you do something in one life, will that affect all the other lives? Or can you go into another life and heal a trauma or change the trajectory, even though you know you're not in that? I'm not making any sense, probably.
No,
I'm just,
you make
It
perfect
is.
sense. Carissa, dive in.
Well, I'll tell you what my spirit guides just gave me, but my left brain is like, there's no effing way. They answered your question, yes. My left brain is going, no. But intuitively, it was like, yes. And we can try to put it together through our left brain, but that is I don't know how we can.
Yeah. My answer to that question is about as clear as mud, because I think anything's possible. So yeah, why not? Why couldn't you heal trauma in a different life? Why not? Like what, of course, things that you do in a different life can affect this life. Of course, depending on the gravity and all of that stuff. Why not? Why not?
Or what if
Exactly.
you wanted to experience 2 different lives where you could heal the trauma? Like, I don't know, right?
Yeah, why not?
Well, I know there's the idea of karma or Chiron. I think that's the astrological term of having something that you're sent here to work through, or a debt, a karma debt that you have to pay. So I know all that's there, but I'm just really fascinated about all of this. And I'm wondering, have either of you, without having done a past life regression, because maybe we'll talk about those in the future episode, have either of you had an experience of reincarnation, like where you've had a glimpse or a connection with someone that you don't know why you do?
I forgot her name. It's a well-known psychic, and I took one of her courses. And I just want to remind you, anyone can do this for you. You don't have to go to a well-known psychic. She just put you in a hypnotic, meditative state and how to connect to a past life. And it was around someone in this life. And it showed me the last life we were in and how everything made sense for this life. It was really cool. I mean, it really made sense. And I'm like, oh, and I can also see how I was kind of like that. I was the man in the past life, and how I was like that a little bit in this life. And
Yeah.
was really, I mean, I couldn't make up these images, because when you're in a hypnotic state and the images are coming to you and you're just like following it versus guiding it.
Right.
Like, I see the footsteps. Oh, I did another one too a long time ago, and she didn't handle that ethically. That's another story. But anyway, did y'all do one?
I've
I've been sick, so
accidentally seen pieces of past lives or future lives, whatever. I mean, depending on the timeline that you're kind of talking, because I've hypnotized. I have been in hypnosis, and I did meditate very, very regularly. I did see snippets of myself in previous lives. And what's interesting, when I was able to see the snippets, the players in my life were always the same players. And so that was really cool. Like the same people, energetically, the same people,
yeah.
like you could feel that specific draw in life. And it was always very interesting for that reason.
And I've done 3 past life regressions, and I do have audio clips of them. Actually, the whole session is recorded, so maybe I can pull those up and I'd be comfortable sharing them with everyone. But I have never gone and listened to them in my natural everyday life. Yeah, maybe a moment will come up and I'll be like, "Ooh, where's that from?" Like, I've never really experienced that. Or if I reflect back on something, I'm like, that wasn't from this life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in that natural state, I know people, like my grandpa had an experience with somebody in his life, and it was a little boy, and they were out walking. And this little boy said to my grandpa, "Don't you remember, like, when we used to go out there? It was our spot. It was only us that ever went out there." And my grandpa was perplexed, because he was like, "I never shared that with anybody except for my brother who had passed." So
Mm-hmm.
that's like very interesting. And then I had a grandma who says that in a past life, she had died in, what are those things? A blimp explosion. And she remembered it, recalled it. So reincarnation has always been talked about kind of openly with certain members of my family, not with everybody. But yeah, it just seems so big. And I just want to say right now, I know when we reincarnate, we can come back as anything. I don't want to come back as a dude. I don't ever have wanted to be a dude.
Oh. And they have a hard life. I mean, they really do have a hard life. They are not allowed to feel, or they are called a wussy, all kinds of words.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that's why women are typically more emotionally mature, because we're allowed to, and they're not. It is hard.
I mean, the one thing I will say that I wouldn't mind is being able to pee anywhere. Like, that would be really
And
cool.
no menstrual cycle. And no menstrual cycle.
Correct.
You guys are making good points here.
That
Peeing
is
and
true.
menstrual cycle.
That is true. I mean, they have no qualms. Well, I'm just gonna pull on over the side of the road, and
And no lines for bathrooms either, because
Yeah.
Supposedly in LA, this one woman was talking about on the 405. I mean, if you've been on there, it's like stuck. You're stuck. Like, you can't do anything. And there's a thing that you can put in your car, and it's like a little litter box, and you just put it and pee in it.
Yeah.
And I'm
I-
like, I would rather be a dude.
Yeah. Just whip it out and go. Sweet baby. Like, seriously.
who would have thought that we could link reincarnation with peeing and
Peeing.
menstrual cycles?
But I was a man in that past life that we were talking about. And
That's what made me think of it when you said that you were a dude.
and I felt, with this female in this life. So in that life, I was her husband, and I really felt like what it was like being a dude. Like, she was kind of stir crazy. She, you couldn't work back then. You just because you went kind of crazy. Anyone can read the book. It's called The Yellow Wallpaper. It's great. It was back in the 50s or 60s.
Well, if you remember, the way to treat women's hysteria early on was an orgasm.
I know.
So just to throw that out there.
But this guy who was me was a nice guy. He comes home from work, and he has this like late 1900 work shoes, and he just sits down and he listens to his hysteria and says, okay. And he thinks he's being a gentleman and nice, but he is being compassionate, but he's not being empathetic.
Right. Well, and that's where you really start diving into a lot of your stereotypical male female role differences too. And you can learn a lot about like who you kind of become in different lives whenever you look at those things, right? So you said something earlier, and it just reminded me of actually a conversation that I had with my husband recently. For whatever reason, he looked at me and he goes, when I come back, I want to come back as a fish. I don't want to be a human again. And I was like, what kind of fish? And what kind? Said a narwhal. I was like, that's a whale. But it takes the pressure off of perfecting the humanity, right? To think that, maybe you can come back. Maybe you do have another choice. Maybe you're just kind of creating this like Lego house of lives where you're learning new things at each one. And it's not necessarily that you have lessons to learn, but it's the experiences that you get that bring you what you need. I don't know how to say it other than that, because it's not necessarily a lesson, but it's the experience that kind of teaches you.
Can I tell y'all something? This is like, oh yeah, we're on a podcast. Sometimes I forget, and I'm just talking with y'all, and I have to remind myself that other people are going to listen. But do you want me to tell you one time where I asked my guides, I was like, why? But why do we keep coming back? Like, why? This is stupid. Why? Oh my God, this is going to sound so weird, but oh well. That our planet really does our planet has to survive for the universe to survive. Like, there could be a ripple effect. And I know this doesn't make sense. Like, we're destroying the planet, but we're also, this is so weird, but it's like we are in our way collecting data about Earth to keep it alive. And I know that makes so illogical sense, right? It's totally illogical, right? Because we're here ruining it.
But are we? I mean, but that's kind of what you're saying is, if we're here and we have to survive and Earth has to survive, is it potentially that the ruining of Earth is actually a natural cycle? Kind of like your ice ages. Like they've actually demonstrated that the ice caps melting has happened cyclically. That was a good word. Cyclically. Sorry, I just expressing myself. I said it right too, which is even better. But because they were able to prove that or show that, it's possible that maybe we're not as destructive as maybe we think we are.
I know, it's because I'm very much for Mother Earth. And one time I sat and I was like, I want to get in touch with Mother Earth. And people had said, oh, she's just angry. She's wrathful. She wants to shake us humans off like fleas on a dog. When I sat and connected with her, I got teary-eyed. I actually really did get teary-eyed because she was so loving. She didn't give a damn. She didn't give a damn. It was like little kids swinging from the grass, her hair, and she was so happy. She was so happy then pulling it out. It was really powerful.
Yeah, I bet. I can only imagine.
It was really nice.
Well, I'm sitting here and listening to all of this, and there is a reason we come back. We're coming back to have an experience. How I envision it, pieces of our soul come down here to have the human experience. So once in a while, you can end up having two versions of yourself on Earth at the same time. And because I've had an experience in my life where someone did say, that was just another version of you. You were on the same timeline, and blowing my mind again. Like, all of this just is so big. It blows my mind.
I don't know if we'll ever have the real answers, scientifically, because it's energy and energy can't be quantitatively measured. So I say I'm open to saying yes.
Open to possibilities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the world is endless possibilities. So why not?
I'm a very introverted person in this life as Michelle. I have personality parts of myself that I love and parts that I'm not so fond of. Do you think when we reincarnate, we come back with the same personality traits? Or do you think there's a version of me out there or has been that's going to be extroverted and is going to speak their mind and going to be like different?
So this is where I go back to what I said about Legos earlier. I personally think that each life is kind of a building block for another. And even if they're happening at the same time, each experience or each life that you're living for whatever experience that offers you, right? So naturally, in one life, you're going to have a very specific personality where you are introverted in certain ways. But in another life, you're a complete and total bitch, and you're very outgoing and you're loud and you're potentially aggressive because you need to have those different experiences in those different lives, right? And you also have to think about the time that you're living in too, because like Carissa was saying earlier about, being in the 1950s, 1940s, women were in the kitchen, the stereotypes, all of that historical stereotypes. So if you were female in that life, or male in that life, you had to fit that role. So whatever experience you have, it kind of creates the personality around it. At least that's my thoughts. That's my theory.
Yeah. And then when I did that past life, I mean, it's really weird because now she is more like him and I'm more like her because I'm more sensitive. Like, things hurt my heart a lot quicker. And he was like, I don't want to be rude and be sexist or anything, but it's the typical,
Well, I realized that what I had said about, the stereotypical, roles might sound very harsh, but historically, that
is. It is.
It was.
Yeah.
And then to add a whole nother layer onto this, we have the life between lives. And that's where the soul contract is brought in, which again, that's a whole nother episode.
Do you remember when I told you this happened on this one lady did it, the psychic, and it was unethical? That's so weird. Well, it's not weird that you brought it up. She went and I couldn't find her again, which is really weird. I can't remember where she lived that I drove to. I couldn't remember her name, her phone number. I lost it. So anyway, went to her. She lived in a trailer park. I drove in, went up. She put me on the couch. I could not move my body when she took me under. And my eyes were open so I can still see. So I feel a little safe. But I was in I I could see all the images. I literally could not move my body. And I said, I can't move my body. She goes, that's okay. You're okay. Really freaking weird. And one psychic I told, she goes, that kind of woman is very rare on this earth. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Anyway, when I was a woman that was abused, and eventually, and I remember I was like, she was like, go to the mirror and see what you look like, blah, blah. And I was like, someone's coming. I have to go. I was like, someone's coming. I gotta go. My teeth are clenched because I can barely move. And she goes, just stay. You're fine. Well, he came in and killed me. And then, because she was so curious, she was like, well, what do you see now? What do you see now? What do you see now? And I'm like, it's dark. It's dark. And then I was like, please stop. Please stop. Finally, she stopped. But she kept me there, which is not right.
No, that's not, especially where you're not feeling safe. Like that's not, I mean, I got certified in hypnotism myself. And the second that your client doesn't feel safe, you're supposed to.
I know. I know.
But
I don't.
how fascinating that afterwards, you can't find her name. You can't locate her. You don't know where you've been.
I drove.
That is fascinating. What's that all about?
I drove. I looked around. I knew what street to get off on it's here in Austin. I knew where to get off. Could not find it.
See, what's interesting to me about that is immediately to me, that feels like you were supposed to have that experience for whatever reason. But what's also I wanted to say about that experience that you had, because you were essentially killed in a past life, right? When I have had glimpses of a past life of myself, I was murdered in a past life as well. Like, just I remember seeing it very vividly, very quickly, and I knew it was I'm gonna say my soul, body, whatever you want to call it. And that was one of the few glimpses that I've had.
That's fascinating. And I know that
Creepy.
all the past life regressions I've had, and again, this is a whole nother episode, they've always ended with the death scene. Take us to how you died and what did you feel like from there. Without being under a state of hypnosis, I do have one memory from, I think, that life between lives in which I can't recall the surroundings, but there's a chair there and there is a man, and it's either Archangel Michael or Jesus, a very safe feeling. And I'm sitting on his lap as like a child. And he says, in the next life, you're protected. You're never going to have to experience anything else like that. And I remember it from the time I was like 4. And why is a 4-year-old thinking about something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I had a memory when I was around 4 or 5, and my mind has slowed it down so I can track it. And little Carissa stops and goes into herself going, I want to go home. But this is like a flash. I'm slowing it down. And then little Carissa goes, but I am home, and looked around. And then she goes, happy, like to play. And then when I started studying psychology, I was like, oh, well, maybe that was because I lived part-time with grandparents because my mom was a single mom and that. No.
And that's so fascinating because many of these case stories or case histories of young kids who are having these memories, they start about 2 years old and they're pretty vivid up until 4, 5, and then at 6, they kind of start to fade away. But when somebody comes back with such details as a 2 or 4-year-old with such particular likes and dislikes with fears, you've got to just stop and listen.
I remember reading one story about this little boy that went on a tour. I think it was down south somewhere where they were on a Revolutionary War tour or something. And it was this little kiddo, and he kept correcting the guide because he was like, no, that's not how it was. But they don't know if it was because he was reincarnated or if he was seeing and talking to spirits while he was there too.
Oh, I love that we're stepping into this because I recently heard someone talking and they were kind of talking about reincarnation. And I'm like, how funny that we're going to have this conversation. And he explained the differences or the difference between channeling and remembering, where remembering is the person is speaking like I was this person. Channeling, it's like you're still that person. And that's like one of the ways you can really tell the difference as to whether or not they're getting that information fed to them from somebody else currently still holding on to that identity, or if it was them and they're recalling it as I was that person.
That's interesting.
Stacy, you're looking contemplative.
I am, because I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about a lot of the case studies that I read myself, because they talked about the life like they still lived it. So I remember one particular instance where I guess this young, again, little boy was looking for his wife, and he was like 3. Where is, I don't remember the names. It's been years since I read this, but where is Rose? Where is Rose? Why can't I find Rose? Like, he is still expecting to continue to live that life. And they finally started looking into Rose and the name and whatever, and they were able to find this person and actually ask questions about her late husband. And everything that the little kid was saying was spot on and accurate. And it scared the crap out of his family because they didn't know what to do with it. But he did start to forget, like you said earlier, when he got a little bit older. But they have like video recordings of this little boy talking about Rose and their kids and the life they were living and why can't I get to her? And like I it's twofold for me, because I cannot imagine being like this little kiddo being so confused about where are these people that I know, and now I'm in this life and I can't even speak or communicate my needs to what is going on, like.
And it's interesting because what I have seen when my grandmother and my grandfather and my aunt passed, there is like this liminary space that they're in right after they pass. That's a whole nother episode. And so then what happens? Then you transition, but when you come back to the human, it's like, then why? If you've already cleared stuff out, it's weird.
Then why?
And why? I know that's me, but then why?
That's where we should have said, okay, we have a drinking game today. The number of times we say, that's a whole nother episode, take a drink. I mean, they'd be drunk right now because we've said that so many times, but this is sparking so many other topics of conversation. And I really would like to take some time to jump into some of these case studies and then put them in the notes so if people want to go look at it. But we're kind of running out of time today. And I know that Carissa was going to talk to us about reincarnation and astrology. So if it's okay with you guys, I think it would be a great time to wrap this episode up. So in the next one, we can come in and talk those 2 case studies, and Carissa can give us the connection between astrology and reincarnation.
I love that. Yeah.
Because then it's really interesting when I was pulling it up, and again, it'll be very broad. You'll see how some of those things can play out in this life that's from that life.
I can't wait.
It's very broad though, but you'll feel it because if someone else heard it, they'd be like, "It's so broad." But if it'll resonate with you.
Let's do it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Well, with that, I'm going to say stay classy.
Stay sassy.
And stay badassy until next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of 3 Cups and a Dash of Spirituality. If you like what you heard, please know that we have a full library of episodes now available on your favorite podcasting platform. You can listen to it now, or you can download it to listen to later. Also, if you'd like to give us a review, we'd appreciate it. We love connecting with listeners, and thank you in advance.